this is now the most important arteria between the highway. It's not a full standard highway, but it's the highway between Durrës, the main commercial port and the main touristic center of Albania, and here the capital Tirana. It's about 30 kilometers, and in between, and that's basically the most important commercial route and commercial area of this country. It has never been transformed in a real highway, unfortunately, and it is difficult to do because it's highly densely urbanized on both sides, and it is also the commercial center. All along here you have hotels, you have the commercial hubs and investments, basically all the construction industry companies, all the big manufacturing companies. They are all logically there is Durrës in the west, and the main center or residential center, the capital Tirana. And you see here, for example, what we have here. Of course, the famous Castrati, it's one of the big petrol companies. And then you have here a lot of these other beautiful places. And you have here a hotel. And you have a lot of these commercial centers. So how is the situation of SMEs? And I would like to describe you the situation of SMEs now in this video, and talk about also the context of economic development. Look, for example, here you have a Mercedes outlet. So you have already a lot, but the problem is manifold. First of all, taxation. Taxation is, of course, a big problem in Albania because there is a high level of tax evasion, because in 2013 they have increased the tax levels from 10 to 15, a very big increase, and also they have increased the income tax from 10 to 23. Additionally, they have introduced fiscal register cases and also made a major campaign against informality. That's all, that's the informality to fight is very good. Tax evasion to fight is very good. But at the same time, to increase the taxes was, of course, not very successful and not very good idea. And it turned out to squeeze the companies. So in the last 10 years, there was actually not very good economic development in Albania. There were no major foreign investors additionally coming, which were not already engaged in the country. And once you're engaged, you anyhow have to do it. And you have to stay because you have started this kind of marriage. You have anchored your money in a country and you are a little bit stuck. Obviously, here you see some of the companies, the medium-sized companies, have done reasonably well in this situation. But there is also, this is, for example, one logistic company that's close to the harbor, very logically. And what has also been quite successfully is the construction material company sector, because that's one of the big sectors here, which is one of the drivers of the economy. Obviously tourism, obviously the construction sector. Here you see the geography, the so-called, this was basically all former swamps. There was Durrës with its hills, where there was the capital and the port historically, and then beyond the first mountain hills, there was then the valley of Tirana, where the capital was created 100 years ago in order to be protected from the sea, from the big powers and their efforts. And these fields actually, they were historically filled with Albanians having been ethnically cleansed from especially the area of Niš. After the Berlin Congress, this whole of Durrës and also these fields here, they were relatively empty, and then all these people who were forcefully removed by the Serbian government after the Berlin Congress, when they got southern Serbia, then southern Serbia integrated into Serbia, the area basically around Niš. It was mainly populated by Albanians, and they were then having to go under the pressure on this genocidal ethnic cleansing, because it was very brutal, let's not make no mistake, and they have settled here. Anyhow, a bit of history. Here you see, obviously, the taxation system was a big mistake of Rama to raise the taxes to that level, It should have stayed with the 10% flat tax, there's no doubt, and we would have a much better decade during the years, as you have seen in Bulgaria and in Macedonia and in Montenegro, where they didn't go back to progressive high taxation and didn't raise the tax levels. They have much better development the last 10 years. It's a very conclusive proof. The second problem obviously is the euro, the lack of the euro, and the kind of manipulation in the financial system. This is of course a big problem, and unfortunately it is still today. I couldn't convince anybody to adopt the euro in Albania because they feel proud, nationalistic about their own currency. They are used to the currency. They have not really understood that in Europe we have the euro, and they think it makes everything expensive because true services and prices of labor are really much lower than in Kosovo and Montenegro. Why? Because the whole economy is much less developed, yeah? And that's of course a big problem. So the currency, the second one. The trade situation has of course big problems as well, because Albania has never completely done this digitalization of all the licensing system. There's a lot of corruption as well in the public services. But what has happened in the last years is a bit of cleanup of the petrol sector. I see that the petrol stations are getting better and cleaner, and it was 10 years ago still a big problem with manipulation of the quality and also the lack of electronic payment systems, and this has the formalization in the petrol companies with also, let's be honest, oligarchization, because basically they have agreed, instead of having many kind of competing petrol stations, they have several few chains, and they have basically got into this oligarchic kind of distribution. But to some extent we have that everywhere in Europe, and so that's less of a problem. At least the petrol stations are no longer petrol stations you run away from. They are not as nice as still in Kosovo, but the petrol stations are really very nice places to spend time even, and restaurants and beautiful kind, like in Austria. As I've said very often, Kosovo is much closer to Austria, and Albania is much more closer to southern Italy or Greece. It's a big cultural divide between the two countries. I've made a separate video about that one. But here about the commercial aspects, you see here is still some land access possible, but you see also the farming companies. These are basically mainly agricultural, agro-food producing companies which have invested, some car retailers or some construction companies. Yeah? This is basically the key sectors of economic development. And there is a little new manufacturing in terms of automotive or something, but what we have obviously is textile, so-called sweatshops, if you want to say it negatively. But you have Italian leather and textile producers, mainly from Italy, who work here for the European textile industry. They provide a lot of employment, very low paid, but for an important segment of the society, this is of course one of the key income sources, and that really has worked well in the last 10 years. There are much more Italian sweatshops in Albania, and that was the economic development Rama wanted, and he had it. This is actually, you see a police control, so you see a working police system. And this is here, for example, Deutsch Color. This is a construction material, colors. Deutsch, very much, all the things with Deutsch are very popular here. They are the synonym for quality and for European standards. So this company calls itself Deutsch. Now we leave the highway, and I will leave this first impression here, and I will also give you some overview over the access road towards Lalsit, because now we are going for the second bay in order to show you that beautiful part of Albania. This is in the north now. We will head now north, another 20 minutes of driving, and we will be then in the so-called Lalsit Bay. That's the name. It's one extremely beautiful sand bay, 20 kilometers, and it's very beautiful. The access road from Tirana is of course still an issue, but the big advantage of that bay is that it's basically from the airport about half an hour to go, and it's extremely close. You can basically fly in and be there in a reasonable time frame. Today is Saturday, so there's a lot of police because there will be a lot of traffic to this beautiful bay this morning. So thanks a lot about SME development here at the main highway, and more to come. And I will make separate videos now about the Lalsit Bay.